Today we're gonna make some beautiful beef broth in the Instapot. We have some veggies from the garden that we're gonna harvest, and then we're just gonna throw them in and make some beautiful beef broth, and then I'm gonna can it. The first step is to get some beef bones, and we got these from a local farm. They're grass-fed beef bones. They were $4 a pound, so it was rather inexpensive for what we could find in our area. I went ahead and threw these in the oven at 350 for about an hour. You can go longer. This step is optional, but when you get this beautiful browning, and that fat starts to render, I got some beautiful juices here in this pan. I'm gonna throw all this in the Instapot. But before I do so, we gotta head to the garden and get some veggies. I got some celery over there that I need to grab. It's a bit past its prime for fresh eating, but the flavor is amazing for things like broth. So let's go ahead and grab that. And the nice thing about doing this in the Instapot, it's that I'm just gonna let it run for a while. And I'm dressed up because I say dressed up, but I'm ready to go because I gotta mow a little bit. So while this is going, I'm gonna do a bunch of different things, and then we can go ahead and can this. So let's get started. We had a friend help us lay down some landscape fabric because the weeds were just taking over. Oh, it's so nice. We can appreciate the garden now. Check out these beautiful flowers and this loofah vine that is just taken over. Oh, I love it. And here, check out the celery. Whoop, focus, camera, focus. So it's not the prettiest, it's not the thickest celery, but it'll do. You just need a little handful. This is packed with flavor, and I'm gonna put the leaves in and everything. Some carrots in the broth. You can do onions, you can do garlic, which we have some here in our garden, but we don't like a super strong broth, because if we're gonna make some soups and other things, I'll add the garlic, I'll add the onions and other things to that later. If you want to add some onions, some carrots, well, carrots I am adding, some onions, some garlic, and some other aromatics, definitely feel free to do so. Side note though, check out this loofah taking over and these beautiful dahlia flowers. Just so pretty. Okay, so I just went ahead and washed that beautiful celery. Again, leaves and all, I just rinsed it and I cut it into pieces that would just fit in the Instapot. Recipe-wise, if you buy celery from the store, I'd say 2, maybe 4 stalks max. Again, this is a guideline. I guess I shouldn't call it a true recipe. Throw some celery in there. And now we're gonna go ahead and put in our beef bones. And don't forget to add all the drippings from that pan. That's the good stuff. Okay, and now I'm gonna go ahead and add some carrots. I just went ahead and washed these, but I'm not even gonna bother to peel them because you're gonna strain this whole entire mixture and it's gonna go forever. So I added about 4 carrots. These are some rainbow carrots that we have, that we bought. You can put any carrots that you want. At this time, you can add about half an onion. You can even add the skin and everything. You can also add 2 to 4 cloves of garlic, and you can go ahead and add the skin to that as well. Okay, now I'm gonna add about a splash of apple cider vinegar. I ran out, but if I had to measure, I'd probably say half a tablespoon to a tablespoon. That will help draw out the collagen out of these bones. And now I'm gonna go ahead and season this. This is some celery salt that we're drying out. So we took the celery tops from the celery in the garden and we blitzed it in the food processor with some salt, and then we let it dry out. It's still got a little bit of moisture left, but this is essentially our homemade celery salt. So I'm gonna add, a decent amount to season this, because it's just gonna give it that cooked for all day brothy flavor. It's just so good. That celery salt, you can add pepper to this, you can add any seasoning that you like. I like to keep mine a little bit more on the plain side, because then whenever I make either soups or broths, or not broths, whenever I make soups, or even I thicken this to make a gravy of sorts, I can add more seasoning later depending on what I want to make. This is kind of the basic recipe. Okay, and lastly, we're gonna go ahead and fill this up with water. In the Instapot, if you're using the Instapot, it has the max line. I don't know if you guys can see this right here. I am going to fill this up with water just about half an inch under that max line, because the beef will produce its own fat and liquid, and it will end up filling up to the max. Okay, this is ready to go. And now I'm going to go ahead and set this to manual. And I'm going to set it for an hour and a half. Make sure that your Instapot is set to sealing up here. And then just let it do its thing. Hi, Bear. Beef broth is ready. I finished mowing the lawn, showered. I am a new man. I don't feel all stinky and gross now. Let me show you the broth. It smells amazing in here. The nice thing is, I got the Instapot right here. I'll show you. But the nice thing about this recipe and the fact that these bones are so potent in flavor and in their beefy goodness is that after I put this in these mason jars, because I'm actually going to can this, you can go ahead and just put it in mason jars. You can freeze it if you want to. You can put it in your fridge if you're going to use it right away. I'm going to can it because I want to have lots of beef broth ready to go in my pantry. And the nice thing about that is I don't have to thaw it out. I don't have to think about it ahead of time, and I'm not very good about doing that. So I just like a jar of broth ready to go. But the nice thing is that I'm actually going to run this in the Instapot a second time. So I'm going to yield about 2 gallons. I may even run this in the Instapot for a third time, even if the third batch isn't the most nutrient dense or as flavorful. It'll still taste like beef broth. And the way I look at it is, if I have to buy beef broth from the store, it's expensive. It tastes weak, in my opinion. If you get one that tastes really good, it's like $10 and upwards, at least in our area, for a 32-ounce container. So it's ridiculously expensive. So even if my slightly watered down third batch, which will still taste better than store-bought, is not as potent as the first or second, I still am able to produce a ton of broth without buying it from the store. So let me zoom in and show you this so that you can see how beautiful it looks, and then I'm going to strain it. All right, guys, so this is the broth all ready to go. I got a bowl here, which is a little over a gallon bowl or so, and then I got a big strainer in here. I'm going to dump the contents of my Instapot in here so that I can strain it, and then I can go ahead and put it in my canning jars. Whoa. Look at that. The color of your broth is going to depend on how much you roast those bones. Also, how much it caramelizes and how much meat is on those bones. These bones didn't have much meat. The color of my broth is kind of light, and that's okay. I actually have seen some people even smear tomato paste on the bones. Some chefs, actually, they'll smear tomato paste on the bones before they roast them, which is pretty cool. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and put all those contents of my beef broth right inside of the Instapot all over again. I got some new carrots right here that I just washed. I'm going to just add a few more, leaving the old ones here as well, because they still have a little integrity to them, so they'll still add a little flavor. And Holly went to the garden. She's going to grab another bunch of celery. So we're going to go ahead and add just the same recipe. I'm going to add some nice celery salt again, our homemade celery salt here that I let out to dry. Again, this is just celery, the celery tops, and salt right there that we blitzed up in the food processor. I'm going to add a decent amount because I tasted this broth and I actually ended up adding just a little more salt because I was a little shy the first time. Oh, it made it so good. I said I ran out of apple cider vinegar earlier, but I found a brand new bottle in my pantry. Oh boy. So just gonna add a good splash of that, like a tablespoon or so. You don't need much. Okay guys, so you can see the beef broth right here. Now at this step, there is quite a lot of fat that's sitting in the top. A lot of people will recommend to let this sit overnight in the fridge. That fat layer on top will solidify, and you can actually remove that fat and you can scrape it off. You can use that fat for cooking, like schmaltz, if you will. You can discard it if you don't like it. I don't mind it in my broth because when I make soups, I actually like the flavor of the fat in there. If it is a little too much fat, I will actually scrape it and use it for other things, but for the sake of canning quickly, I actually can the whole thing, fat and all. So for my last jar right here, I didn't quite have enough to equal 4 jars, so I ended up adding just a little bit, like a 1/4 cup of water, to get this to about 1 inch headspace. And the reason I did that is so that I have 4 full quarts, and the broth tastes so deep in flavor that I'm not actually worried about watering it down or watering down the flavor, because it's pretty intense and of beefy flavor. You can definitely taste the sweetness of the carrot. You can taste that celery that we put in there. I don't taste the vinegar at all. It just helps extract some of the collagen and nutrients from the bones. But now I'm going to go ahead and wipe these rims because there is quite a bit of layer of fat from the beef broth. You can see here how much fat we got out. You see that layer? It's about 1/2 inch there, maybe even 1 inch of fat, which I'm perfectly okay with when I'm making my soups, stews, even gravies. When I can use this and thicken it up, I actually want that fat in there because it has a lot of that beefy flavor. So let's go ahead and wipe these, put the lids on, and we can get to canning. Actually, let's go ahead and get this going. Holly just washed up some celery that she got from the garden. I'm gonna put a little vinegar on this and wipe the rim. If you hear that beeping, that's my robot vacuum, which we lovingly call pizza. Okay, in my last jar here, I'm just screwing these on what's called finger tight. You don't want to screw these on too tightly because if you do, this will bow up. The lid will. Let's go ahead and get our canner ready. So this is my Presto digital canner. This is what I use for pressure canning. If you are a beginner and you want to get into canning so that you can have low acid foods like broth or meats, I can show you a sneak peek of what we have in our pantry, and I can show you what I use with what I make and pressure can. But I do it all with this, super easy. I love it because you can stick things in, set it, and you can walk away and it does the work for you. In the meantime, I'm here in my pantry. I can show you what other things you can pressure can. I have pressure canned some black beans right there. This is some ground beef. I have some regular just chicken breasts back there. Some people say you can't stack them. I only stack these and then I check the seal and make sure it's okay. You can also put a piece of cardboard or something in between and then you can actually safely stack them that way. I'm a bit of a, I live on the wild side. I do check my seals, make sure everything's okay. They say to not stack because it can affect your seal. I haven't had that issue, so I keep stacking my jars like that. This is barbecue sauce, but that is water bath canning. And then we can, for the first time, some beef stroganoff. Highly recommend it. We love having that on hand. And then these are all jams, jellies, butters that we can, but those are water bath canning, not necessarily pressure canning. So let's go ahead and set this for 25 minutes. It says insert jars. I'm gonna skip that. I'm actually gonna skip the warm feature by holding this button on the right side for about 3 seconds, and now it will heat. And the reason I'm doing that is because my jars are really hot. So that will help get this water up to temperature. My water is at that line right there. That's where you need the water to be so that you can pressure can safely. Now I'm gonna go ahead and wait for that to heat up. We'll put the jars in and we're good to go. This is up to temperature. Luke is gonna help me put the jars in here. He's got the little grabber. Good job.
Should I put it here?
And then just place them in gently. There you go. With this can in particular, you can fit 5 quarts in here, and typically you would put them like that, you know, and then you have another one in here. You can put an empty jar so that these don't rock and hit each other, but I've never had an issue. I just put 4 and it's fine. Now we're gonna put the lid on. Seal her up. Go ahead, Luca. Good work. So I'm gonna go ahead and just let it do its thing. If it doesn't get too late, I will go ahead and show you the jars. If not, I'll end it at this. But if you do see a little bit more time on this video, I'll go ahead and show you those jars all canned, ready to go. I hope this video was helpful and you saw how easy it is to make beef broth or stock or whatever you want to call it. And if you want to can it too, the Presto digital canner is the way to go in my opinion. You can always look on Facebook Marketplace and see if you can find a good deal on them. If you're a beginner canner and you want to get into canning things like that, if not, just go ahead and freeze it or use it right away. We'll see you in the next video if I can get this done on time, and I'll show you the end product. Bye. I wanted to show you guys the difference between the first batch right here on the left, the color, and the color of the second batch. So the second batch, I can't even tell the difference in terms of color when I taste it. So when I taste the second, this is the second batch I'm tasting. Tastes like smooth beef broth. It tastes better than the store. It does taste a little less beefy than the first batch, but not by much. I'm gonna leave it at 2 batches because I'm just tired. I could probably let it go a third batch. It would be pretty weak for the third, which would be just fine. Maybe, I don't know. I'm kind of done. I wanna can the 2 batches and just be done with the whole project and clean up because it's getting late. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. We'll see you in the next one. Bye. Oh, and I did forget to mention, I do have a chicken broth video. I'll link it somewhere so that you can check that out if you're wondering how to make chicken broth as well.